If you enjoy what we do on these podcasts, please go to mwpnews.com. There you can see articles about some of the movies we've seen, some things that we don't talk about on podcasts, and links to ways you can support the show. Thank you. Good morning, and welcome to the Backlog Files. I am Adam. Let's talk about leaks, because there's a big one. And obviously we haven't weighed in yet. And here's how I feel about this. And this is kind of going to be what it is that kind of dictates how we handle this from here on out. Because all I can add to the conversation about the Game Freak leaks is what I think about the contents that were leaked. What do I think about the leaked Pokemon that were cut, the alternate forms of Pokemon, the original concept art of Pokemon, what was going to be in the games, what wasn't going to be in the games, all that stuff, That's all I can add to it. Because I'm not a game dev, I'm not someone who works for Game Freak, I don't know anyone who works for Game Freak, and, one of the founding principles of all the shows and MWP News is we're not going to misrepresent, reality. We're not going to misrepresent who we know, who we don't know, in an effort to get people to read or listen to anything we're doing. Now, that said, I think there is a conversation to be had about the leaks in a more general sense, specifically the reporting on the leaks. Because at the end of the day, if you're a news outlet, I don't think that there is any benefit in bringing a lot of this there besides the clicks and the engagement you get from talking about it, because people are curious. Innately, the general public is going to be curious what was cut from these games. I mean, look, there's an entire, YouTube subgenre entirely devoted to cut content of video games and deleted scenes and stuff like that. These iceberg videos of things that were removed from various media, and that is something that, they're going to engage with. Now, the fact that we have major trades or major industry trades, what are considered the journals of record for the video game industry, deciding to, report on these and be like, oh, look at this, oh, look at this, oh, look at this. I saw, Comicbook.com read an article about some of the leaks, some of the specifics of the leaks, and I was like, but why? And look, to an extent, there is a portion of this that comes from the fact that we do not have any information about ZA since it was announced in February. Was it February? Yeah, it was February, Pokemon Day. Since it was announced on Pokemon Day, we have not had any information about this game, besides the fact that it's coming next year. But here's my issue. That's kind of this whole, why we're here. I don't think it does any good to delve into the specifics of what is not coming and be like, here's what you didn't get. Because all it's going to do is piss people off. So, there was a Pokemon that had a very different original concept art. I saw the concept art yesterday, and it's one of those oh, that doesn't look anything like what the final form of that Pokemon was that we ended up seeing in the game with one of the starters. And I was like, alright, I see, that's cool, I guess, but again, for a major publication to be reporting on that, it's who does that benefit? Who does it benefit to have that information? I think there is, and let's be clear, there is something to be said about, transparency from a studio, from a developer. Because I think that as you talk about video games as an iterative process, video games are a process by which, seeing what others do and learning what others do makes the entire thing better for everyone. It's a very community-focused form of art, where it's like, as people do one thing, it's rare. There's been a handful of times that someone patents a new good idea, like mini games on load screens or the Nemesis system, because this is such a community-focused form of making art. It's one of those things where it's like there is something to be said about transparency. There is something to be said about, as a player, being able to see what went into a game on the terms of the developer. Because here's the thing, there are a lot of designs here that didn't end up getting used. Some of them you could see ended up getting partially reappropriated later down the line. Some of them you could see ended up getting just completely omitted entirely. And it's like, okay, that's interesting. It's interesting in the most superficial sense. But if there's something that didn't get used and they're now in development of new games, they could just not use it because it's now leaked and be like, well, we don't want to have to deal with comparisons to what ended up not happening. It's a conundrum that, look, there is something in that regard, but if it's in, we saw the same thing with the Insomniac League. The other games that Insomniac is developing down the line that are currently in active, pre-development, does it help anyone to know what those are? Does anyone benefit from knowing that there are other games that they haven't announced yet coming down the line in major franchises? Does that help anyone? It doesn't help me, because it's okay, when they announce it, we'll know about it. But right now, that game is 7 years out. Who cares? What does it matter? And to that end, we're not going to be talking about specifics of the league. And the other big reason why, there's one other really big reason why I refuse to talk about specifics of the league, is that I do not want to create a situation where someone will actively seek them out. And the reason for that is, it's not just developer information in that regard. It's not just developers talking about, their concept art or the source code for old games or anything like that. This is very, wide-reaching. It is employee personal information. It's personal emails. It's all of this additional stuff that I'm like, really? Do we really need to have all of this be public record? And by telling everyone, hey, look, this is a thing that's out there, and here's why you should read this, it creates a market for people to go and look for it further. And it's identity theft is an issue, and there's plenty of other issues that go into this. And it's look, these are still people. And the other thing is, too, it's all leaks really do, at the end of the day, is contribute to the hostility that is kind of rampant within the games industry. And specifically, how gamers perceive their right to ownership over what's there. The idea that just as you buy something means that you got a say in everything about it, and you know better than the person who is making the game. And looking at what could have been, and now we know will not be, does not help with that. It does not add to the conversation in a meaningful and positive way. All it does is add to the negativity. By just being well, we could have had a third form for this Pokemon, but they didn't do it. Or, oh, this is coming down the line. And the other thing is, too, it's look, the other really big reason why we're not talking about it is I can't vet the legitimacy of any of the leaks, which is kind of a big deal. I want to make sure before I talk about anything or publish anything or anything like that, and that's why I've been so cagey about a lot of the details that I've seen. I don't know how accurate a lot of this stuff is. Like, were there things that were just made up and thrown in there? Who knows? I don't. Like, I can't, like, Game Freak said yes, they had a data breach, but all that means is that stuff was stolen. Like, it doesn't mean that everything everyone purports to be from the leak is 100% accurately from the leak. It could be completely made up. It could be fan fiction that was lumped in and like, oh, look at this, look at what they said. Like, and look, there's probably someone who has done the vetting somewhere, and good for them, but I'm not going to, because, again, I don't think there's a benefit to doing that, especially when things don't matter fundamentally. And look, there are conversations to be had about some of the decisions within the Pokemon Company that these leaks do kind of put a spotlight on. And that was an approach I debated taking, but still at the same time I was like, you know what? Let's just set the standard now. We are not going to talk about the contents of leaks. We will say a data breach happened, if it's a big enough one. And beyond that, we will not be talking about, anything beyond that. But we'll wrap up there for today. Until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.